The Vortak Imperial Armada moved through space like a giant wall of metal and death. 10,000 warships flew together in perfect lines toward the small blue planet they called Target 7739. Each ship was huge, bigger than Earth's tallest buildings, and they all moved with deadly purpose. Admiral Kavlos stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dark Conquest. The bridge was dark and cold, filled with glowing screens and the quiet hum of alien technology. Kavlos was not human, his skin was covered in dark green scales, and his eyes were yellow like a snake's. He had sharp teeth that showed when he smiled, which he was doing now as he looked at the screens showing Earth getting closer. "Admiral," said his communications officer, a smaller alien with 4 arms who worked at a computer panel. "Our scout ships have finished checking the target planet. The humans have very basic space travel. Their best ships still use old chemical rockets. They are very primitive." Kavlos made a sound like laughing, but it was more like a growl. His clawed hands touched the metal railing as he stared at Earth on the main screen. "Perfect," he said in his deep voice. "Just like all the others." This was not the first planet Kavlos had attacked. Over many years, his armada had conquered 47 different worlds. Some planets had tried to fight back with lasers or missiles, but none had lasted more than a few days. Earth would be number 48 and probably the easiest one yet. The alien ships continued moving toward Earth. They were so many that they blocked out stars as they passed. Each warship carried thousands of Vortak soldiers, all ready to land on Earth and take control of the planet. Their weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds. Their shields could stop any attack the humans might try. But far away, hidden under the surface of Earth's moon, something was watching them. Commander Park sat in a secret room deep inside the moon. The room was filled with computers and screens showing space around Earth. Park was a human man in his 40s, with black hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. His fingers moved across the control panel as he watched the alien ships approach. The screens showed exactly how many ships there were, how fast they were moving, and what weapons they carried. Earth's secret moon base had been watching space for decades, waiting for visitors like these. "This is Commander Park to Central Command," he said into his communication device. His voice was steady and calm. "The visitors have arrived. 10,000 ships, just like we predicted they would bring." On Earth, deep under the city of Seoul in South Korea, Admiral Kim received Park's message. She stood in a large underground room filled with computers, screens, and military officers from every country on Earth. The room looked like something from a science fiction movie, but it was very real. Admiral Kim was a smart woman in her 50s. She had short black hair and wore a crisp military uniform. For 30 years she had helped prepare Earth for this exact moment. While the rest of the world thought humanity only had basic space shuttles and simple satellites, Kim and others like her had been building something much more powerful. "Signal all defense stations," Admiral Kim ordered her staff. Officers immediately began typing on computers and speaking into communication devices. "Operation Silent Thunder is now active. And someone wake up Captain Lee, we will need the Ghost Fleet ready." All around Earth's solar system, hidden bases began to wake up. Secret space stations that looked like asteroids powered up their systems. Weapons that had been sleeping for decades began to charge. Ships that were invisible to all sensors started to move into position. Captain Lee was sleeping in his quarters aboard a ship called the Invisible Wind. The ship was floating in space near Mars, but no one could see it. Special technology made it completely invisible, not just to human eyes, but to any kind of scanner or detection system. When his communication device beeped, Captain Lee opened his eyes immediately. He was a man in his 30s, trained for war but hoping he would never have to fight. He looked at his watch and saw the time. After 30 years of preparing and waiting, the moment had finally come. Lee got up from his bed and put on his uniform. He walked to the bridge of his ship, where his crew was already working at their stations. Through the windows he could see nothing but empty space and stars. But he knew that dozens of other invisible ships were out there, all waiting for orders. The Invisible Wind was not alone. All around the solar system, a secret fleet of human warships was getting ready. They called it the Ghost Fleet because no enemy could see them coming. Each ship carried weapons that the Vortak could not imagine. Humanity had learned to hide its true power very well. As Captain Lee sat in his command chair, he thought about all the years of preparation. While the world above thought humans were still learning to fly to the moon, people like him had been preparing for war among the stars. The aliens thought they were attacking a weak, primitive planet. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The battle for Earth was about to begin, but the Vortak had no idea what they were really facing. Admiral Kavlos sat in his private quarters aboard the Dark Conquest, reading reports on a glowing screen. The room was dark and filled with the smell of alien metal and strange chemicals. On his desk were thick files about humans, written by his best scientists who studied other species. Humans, he read out loud in his growling voice. Primitive species. Aggressive and tribal. Fight among themselves constantly. Limited to one planet. Their strongest weapons are crude nuclear bombs. Estimated time to conquer, 4 hours. Kavlos leaned back in his chair and made the sound that passed for laughter among his kind. 4 hours seemed like too much time. Most planets surrendered within minutes once they saw the size of his armada. Earth would probably give up even faster. The alien fleet continued moving through space toward Earth. They had just passed the orbit of Neptune, the farthest planet from the Sun. Kavlos expected human ships to come out and try to fight them, but space remained empty. His sensors showed nothing but empty darkness and distant stars. Perfect, Kavlos thought to himself. They are so primitive they do not even have ships to send against us. This was exactly what he expected from such a backward species. His scientists had told him that humans were still using chemical rockets, the same basic technology they had used hundreds of years ago. They barely knew how to fly to their own moon, much less fight a war in space. Kavlos walked onto the bridge of his flagship. The huge room was filled with alien officers working at glowing control panels. Through the main window he could see some of his other warships flying in formation. Each ship was massive, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire cities. Communications officer, Kavlos commanded. Send the standard surrender message to the planet. The communications officer, a thin alien with 6 eyes, immediately began working at his panel. Yes, Admiral. Broadcasting on all frequencies now. The message traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching Earth in just a few minutes. It was translated into every human language automatically. People of Target 7739, the message said in Kavlos's deep, threatening voice. You are now subjects of the Vortak Empire. Stop all resistance immediately and prepare for occupation. You have 24 standard hours to comply with our demands. Deep under Seoul, in the secret command center, Admiral Kim heard the message playing through speakers. She was standing in front of a wall of screens showing the alien fleet. Around her, dozens of military officers from every country on Earth were working at computers and monitoring systems. Admiral Kim smiled as she listened to the aliens' demands. After 30 years of preparing for this moment, she almost felt sorry for them. They had no idea what they were really facing. Lieutenant Han, she called to her communications officer, a young woman sitting at a nearby computer. Please send our response. Use the diplomatic protocols, we would not want to seem rude to our visitors. Lieutenant Han nodded and began typing on her keyboard. Yes, ma'am. Sending response now. The message that went back to the alien fleet was polite and friendly, spoken in a calm human voice. To the Vortak fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. We appreciate your invitation but must respectfully decline. Have a pleasant day. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Kavlos heard the human response and made his growling laugh again. Typical, he said to his bridge crew. They always think they can resist at first. Every species says no before they realize how hopeless their situation is. His officers made agreeing sounds. They had heard similar responses from 47 other planets. The humans would change their minds quickly once the bombing started. They will surrender within the hour, Kavlos predicted confidently. No species can look at our armada and still think they can win. But what Admiral Kavlos did not know was that his fleet was already surrounded. In the darkness of space around the Vortak Armada, dozens of human ships were floating silently. These ships were completely invisible, not just to the eye, but to every kind of scanner and detection system the aliens had. The humans called this quantum stealth technology, and it made their ships like ghosts in the void. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Invisible Wind. Through his windows he could see the alien warships clearly, but he knew they could not see him. His ship was less than 1,000 kilometers away from the enemy, close enough to count the weapon ports on their hulls. All Ghost Fleet units, Captain Lee whispered into his communication device. This is Lee. Move into final attack positions. Stay silent and stay invisible. Around the alien fleet, more human ships were moving. Captain Cho commanded a smaller vessel called the Silent Arrow. His ship was a destroyer built specifically for fast attacks. Like all the Ghost Fleet ships, it carried weapons the aliens had never seen before. All Ghost Fleet units, this is Cho, Captain Cho whispered into his communication system. Weapons are hot and ready. Awaiting Admiral Kim's signal to attack. In space stations hidden throughout the solar system, more human forces were preparing. Weapons that had been disguised as asteroids for decades were powering up. Secret bases on moons and planets were getting ready to fire. The Vorthak fleet continued moving toward Earth, confident and unaware. They thought they were hunting helpless prey. They did not realize they had flown into a trap that had been 30 years in the making. The Vorthak Armada moved past Jupiter like a massive wave of death and metal. Admiral Kavlos stood on his bridge, feeling very pleased with himself. In his mind, he was already planning the victory party his officers would have after conquering Earth. He thought about how easy this conquest would be compared to some of the other planets that had tried to fight back. "Admiral," called his sensor operator from across the bridge. The operator was a young Vorthak with nervous eyes who watched the scanning equipment. "Admiral, I am detecting something strange. The readings are..." The operator never finished his sentence. Around the alien fleet, space itself began to change. The darkness started to shimmer and ripple like water. Then, as if by magic, ships began to appear out of nothing. First one, then 10, then dozens of human vessels materialized around the Vorthak Armada. The human ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They were sleek in silver, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their hulls gleamed with strange lights and technologies that the Vorthak had never seen before. Some ships were small and fast like deadly arrows. Others were huge, bigger than anything in the alien fleet. Admiral Kavlos stared at the screens in shock. His yellow eyes went wide and his scaled hands gripped the metal railing so hard his claws left scratches. "What is this?" he snarled, his voice filled with confusion and growing fear. "Where did these ships come from? How did they hide from our sensors?" His bridge crew was in panic. Alarms were blaring throughout the ship. Officers were shouting at their control panels, trying to understand what was happening. The Vorthak had conquered 47 worlds, but they had never seen anything like this. Suddenly, a human voice came through every communication channel on every Vorthak ship. The voice was calm and clear, speaking perfect Vorthak language. It was Admiral Kim, broadcasting from deep under Seoul. "This is Admiral Kim of Earth Defense," her voice said. "You were warned." What happened next lasted exactly 4.3 seconds, but it changed everything. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Invisible Wind. His ship was one of the largest in the Ghost Fleet, and it carried humanity's most powerful weapons. Lee looked at the alien armada surrounding his position and felt almost sad for them. They had no idea what was about to happen. "Fire," Captain Lee said quietly into his communication device. The Invisible Wind fired first. But this was not a normal weapon like bullets or lasers. Instead, the ship created what humans called a directed gravitational pulse. It was like grabbing space itself and squeezing it into a tiny ball. The weapon hit 300 Vorthak ships at once. The massive alien warships, each one bigger than a city block, suddenly collapsed in on themselves. In less than a second, they were crushed into small cubes of superdense matter, each cube no bigger than a car but weighing as much as the original ship. Captain Cho, commanding the smaller destroyer Silent Arrow, fired his weapons at the same time. His ship used quantum disruptors, weapons that could make things stop existing in this reality. Entire squadrons of alien ships simply vanished as if they had never been there at all. One moment they were flying through space and the next moment there was just empty darkness. On the moon, Commander Park was coordinating the attack from his secret base. He activated what humans called solar collection arrays, massive devices that could capture the power of the sun itself and focus it into deadly beams of plasma. Streams of stellar fire, hotter than the surface of the sun, lanced out from hidden positions throughout the solar system. When these beams hit the alien ships, the massive warships simply evaporated. Metal that had been forged in alien factories turned to gas in milliseconds. Lieutenant Yoon was aboard a human defense platform called Thunder's Edge, hidden in the asteroid belt. She watched through her screens as the battle unfolded, her mouth open in amazement. "Ma'am," she said to her commander, her voice full of awe, "the alien fleet is gone." And it was true. In just over 4 seconds, 10,000 Vorthak warships had been destroyed. Some had been crushed into tiny cubes. Others had been erased from existence entirely. Many had been vaporized by solar plasma beams. The space around Jupiter, which moments before had been filled with a massive alien armada, was now mostly empty. Only one ship remained. Admiral Kavlos's flagship, the Dark Conquest, floated alone in space. The ship was damaged but not destroyed. Its engines were broken and smoking. Its weapons were offline. Its life support systems were failing and the lights on the bridge were flickering. Kavlos himself was thrown to the floor when the human attack began. Now he pulled himself up, his scaled hands shaking as he looked at his screens. Where his mighty armada had been, there was nothing. 10,000 ships and millions of soldiers, all gone in seconds. Impossible, he whispered. This cannot be real. But it was real. And now a new human ship was approaching his damaged flagship. This ship was different from the warships. It was painted white with red crosses, the universal symbol for medical help. Captain Jean commanded this rescue vessel, called Mercy's Hand. He received his orders directly from Admiral Kim on Earth. Captain Jean, Kim's voice said calmly through the communication system. Bring the survivor aboard. Let's have a conversation. Admiral Kavlos woke up in a room unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were smooth and white, with a soft glow that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The air smelled clean and fresh, nothing like the metallic smell of his own ships. He was sitting in a comfortable chair at a round table, and across from him sat a human. The human was a small woman with short black hair and kind eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform and was reading something on a thin device. When she saw that Kavlos was awake, she looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Admiral," she said in perfect Vorthak language. Her voice was gentle and calm. "I am Captain Min, welcome aboard the Harmony's voice." Kavlos tried to stand up quickly, but his body was still weak from the shock of losing his entire fleet. He looked around the room trying to understand where he was. Through a large window he could see stars and the darkness of space. "This cannot be real," he growled, his voice rough and confused. "Your species is primitive. Our scouts studied you for months. You have only chemical rockets and basic nuclear weapons." Captain Min nodded and set down her device. "Yes, that is what we wanted your scouts to see," she said quietly. "We understand why you are confused." "Impossible." Kavlos slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Our intelligence is never wrong. We have conquered 47 worlds. We know how to study a species before we attack." "You studied what we showed you," Captain Min replied calmly. She touched a button on the wall, and the room's window became larger, showing more of the space outside. Kavlos looked through the window and his breath caught in his throat. He could see other human ships floating nearby. But these ships were not like the warships that had destroyed his fleet. These were enormous, so big that his entire flagship could fit inside one of their cargo holds. The ships were like floating cities with lights and sections that stretched for kilometers. "Your flagship was 800 meters long," Captain Min said, watching his reaction. "The ship you are on now is 15 kilometers long. And this is just a medium-sized vessel for us." Before Kavlos could respond, the door to the room opened. An old human man walked in, moving slowly but with dignity. He had gray hair and gentle eyes, but something about him made Kavlos feel even more nervous than the weapons had. "Admiral Kavlos," the old man said, bowing slightly in a polite greeting. "I am Admiral Song. I hope you are feeling better after your ordeal." Kavlos stared at the elderly human. "Who are you? What do you want with me?" Admiral Song sat down at the table across from Kavlos. "I want to explain something to you," he said in his quiet voice. "Something about humanity that your scouts could not have discovered." Song folded his hands on the table and looked directly into Kavlos's yellow eyes. "Long ago humanity possessed very advanced technology. We could travel between stars, build weapons that could destroy planets, create ships larger than moons. We were a powerful species. Then where was this power when we arrived?" Kavlos demanded. "Why did your planet look so primitive?" "Because we made a choice," Song replied. "We chose to step back from our technology. We decided to focus on other things: philosophy, art, music, social development. We learned that the most advanced civilizations are not always the ones with the biggest weapons." Kavlos shook his head in disbelief. "No species gives up power voluntarily. It makes no sense." Admiral Song smiled sadly. "We discovered something important, Admiral. We learned that appearing primitive prevents unnecessary conflicts. When other species see us as weak, they usually leave us alone. We can live in peace and focus on becoming better people." Through the window, Kavlos could see more human ships appearing. Some were so large they looked like small planets. Others moved in ways that seemed to ignore the normal rules of physics. A young human officer walked by the window outside, carrying a data pad. When she saw the alien looking at her, she looked up and smiled politely, as if seeing prisoners from conquered fleets was perfectly normal. "Lieutenant June seems very relaxed for someone who just fought a major battle," Captain Min observed, following Kavlos's gaze. "Your scouts saw our public space program," Admiral Song continued. "Chemical rockets, basic satellites, simple space stations. That is what we allow the galaxy to see. But our real capabilities have been hidden for centuries. Kavlos felt a cold fear growing in his chest. How much technology do you really have? Admiral Song was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. The fleet that destroyed your armada in 4.3 seconds represents approximately 0.05% of our defensive capability. The number hit Kavlos like a physical blow. If the humans had used only 0.05% of their power, and that had been enough to destroy 10,000 warships instantly, then their real strength was beyond imagination. We have no desire to conquer other worlds, Song said gently. We learned long ago that true strength comes from wisdom, not from domination. But we will defend ourselves when necessary. And we are very, very good at defending ourselves. Kavlos looked out the window again at the massive human ships. For the first time in his military career he felt truly afraid. 3 days had passed since the destruction of the Vortak Armada. Admiral Kavlos stood in a large metal room inside the human ship New Dawn. The room was called a shuttle bay, and it was bigger than the main hall of his emperor's palace back home. Small human spacecraft were parked along the walls, each one sleek and advanced beyond anything his empire could build. Kavlos felt strange wearing human clothes instead of his military uniform. The humans had given him simple gray garments that were surprisingly comfortable. His scaled skin still ached from the shock of losing his entire fleet, but his body was healing. The humans had treated his injuries with medicine that worked better than anything Vortak doctors had. A human officer approached him. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and short black hair. Her uniform had stripes that showed she held an important rank. Admiral Kavlos, she said in careful Vortak language. I am Commander Nam. It is time for you to go home. Commander Nam held out a small metal container about the size of a book. The container was sealed with strange human symbols that glowed softly blue. This is for your emperor, she explained, placing the container in Kavlos's clawed hands. It contains our formal response to your empire's invitation to surrender. Kavlos looked down at the container. It felt heavier than it looked, as if it contained more than just documents. What does it say? He asked. Commander Nam smiled, but her eyes were serious. That is for your emperor to read first. But I think you can guess the general message. She led him to a small spacecraft parked near the bay doors. The ship was tiny compared to his old flagship, but Kavlos could see that it was built with the same advanced technology as all human vessels. Its hull was smooth and perfect, without any of the rough welding marks that covered Vortak ships. This courier ship will take you back to Vortak space, Commander Nam explained. It has enough fuel and supplies for the journey. The navigation system is already programmed with a safe route home. Kavlos climbed into the small ship. The inside was clean and simple, with controls that seemed designed for his clawed hands. A soft voice in perfect Vortak welcomed him aboard and explained how to operate the basic systems. As the shuttle bay doors opened, Kavlos started the engines. The small ship lifted off smoothly and flew out into space. Behind him, the massive human vessel New Dawn grew smaller, but he could see dozens of other human ships in the distance. Another human ship, sleek and fast, flew alongside his courier vessel. A voice came through his communication system. Admiral Kavlos, this is Captain O, the voice said. I will escort you to the edge of the solar system to make sure you have a safe journey. Kavlos looked through his small window at the human escort ship. It was beautiful and deadly like all their vessels. Why are you helping me? He asked. I came here to conquer your world. Captain O's voice was calm and patient. Because that is who we are, Admiral. We do not wish to be enemies with anyone. But we will defend ourselves if we must. As the two ships flew away from Earth, Kavlos looked back at the small blue planet through his viewport. But something else caught his attention, Earth's moon. As he watched, the moon seemed to change before his eyes. What he had always thought was a natural satellite, just a ball of rock and dust, was revealing its true nature. Massive structures were unfolding from its surface like deadly metal flowers blooming in space. Weapon platforms, shield generators, and devices he could not even identify spread across the moon's surface. In minutes, the peaceful-looking moon transformed into a fortress that could probably destroy entire fleets. By the void, Kavlos whispered to himself. The moon itself is a weapon. Captain O's voice came through the communication system again. Admiral, you carry a very important message back to your empire. Earth wants peaceful relations with all civilizations. We have no desire to conquer or control others. But you must understand we will defend ourselves if threatened again. Your empire must choose its next actions very carefully. The two ships reached the edge of the solar system, where space began to thin out into the emptiness between stars. Captain O's ship stopped, but Kavlos's courier vessel continued forward. "Safe travels, Admiral," Captain O said. "I hope the next time we meet, it will be as friends rather than enemies." Kavlos activated his ship's hyperspace drive. As space twisted around him and the stars became lines of light, he thought about what he would tell his Emperor. He was returning not as a conquering hero, but as the sole survivor of the greatest military disaster in Vortak history. The humans had not encountered a primitive world ready for conquest. They had awakened a sleeping giant that could erase them from existence with barely a thought. Back on Earth, deep in the command center under Sol, Admiral Kim watched the alien ship disappear into hyperspace on her screens. Around her, human officers were returning to their normal duties. Lieutenant Park approached her with a data pad in his hands. "Ma'am, all Ghost Fleet units have returned to their hidden positions. The solar system appears normal again." Admiral Kim nodded and allowed herself a small smile. "Good work, everyone. Let's hope the Vortak choose diplomacy over war. Captain Lee, you can stand down from full alert, but keep all defenses ready." Throughout the solar system, humanity's incredible weapons disappeared back into hiding. The moon folded its defensive structures back under its surface. The massive warships activated their stealth systems and vanished from all sensors. Space around Earth looked empty and peaceful again. But now, humanity's true strength waited patiently in the darkness, ready for whatever the universe might bring next.